Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper podcast, where somebody's got to say it. My name is Patrick Hayes, and with me today is a guest, Bekah Freyer, who is a missionary to New Zealand. Greg, how are you doing today?
Doing well. It's good to be here. Excited to be here finally, and looking forward to what's going to happen.
Good. Yeah. So let's do a little bit of getting to know you stuff for the audience. You and your wife, and you have 2 kids, correct?
Yes, sir.
Little girl, 2 years old.
Yes, sir.
Cutest thing I've seen in my entire life.
I agree.
And then a boy who doesn't say much. I think it's a little rude. And he's what?
He's
10 weeks old?
10 weeks tomorrow.
10
yes,
weeks
sir.
tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. And you guys are going to be missionaries to New Zealand, and you guys are hoping to get going there here in the next couple months, right?
Yeah. We just applied for the little one's visa or passport just actually on Monday, and once we get that back, we're able to start the paperwork to eventually get to New Zealand. So we get that back, and then we'll start the application process and get moving. Hopefully, be there early fall this year.
What would be a reason New Zealand would say no? I mean, is that, how does that work? And I know being a missionary in different countries is different, but New Zealand and America have a friendly relationship. Is there anything that would stop someone? Or is there a red flag or something?
Not really, unless we mess something up on our end. If we made the wrong step too early or too late, there are some time-sensitive portions of the visa application that we have to be aware of. If we go past one of the deadlines or we send something out too early before something else, then that could be an issue. But as far as us getting to New Zealand, no, there's really not a whole lot of restrictions. They know what we're coming there to do. The only requirement that they give us is that we work under a already existing church for that first visa. And then once that visa expires and we can apply for our residency, we're then able to launch out and start our work on our own.
So your first visa, how long is that good for?
It's about 3 to 4 years, and then we'll apply for residency sometime after that 3rd year mark. We can begin to apply, I think, at 2.5 years, and that takes us into year 3, and hopefully we receive it by year 4.
So the nation of New Zealand wants you working under an established business, in this case a church, in their country for no less than 2.5 years.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So you guys are committed to at least where you'll be the first 2.5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not like David Livingstone just going off somewhere into Africa and figuring it out.
That's correct.
You guys, because of the country, are required to work with a church that's set up over there.
That's correct. And it also helps us really to just kind of have an avenue in. You think of some guys that had to go just as pioneer missionaries, not knowing what is going to they'll embark on. We know what we're coming into. We know the man we're going to work with. So there's some peace in that, moving over.
Sure.
So we're excited about it.
Nowadays, are there many pioneer missionaries anymore? I mean, just about every country, I got to imagine, has some kind of work somewhere, doesn't it?
There's a few. I know of one right now that actually was in our candidate school for our missions agency. He was going to be a pioneer missionary over in, I believe it was the Republic of Congo. There hasn't been one there, but there are plenty of nations that don't have any gospel preaching missionary there.
No kidding.
I know the country of the Maldives. That's 99.9% Muslim, and we think of it as a tourist, just a beautiful part of the world. But if you are caught handing out a gospel tract, you'll be deported back. And
wow.
So there's definitely nations like that. I believe North Korea.
I would imagine they're closed to everything, not just missionaries.
Right. So
they're closed to Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm sure there's a few out there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but
okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Now, Greg, you and I have something in common when we started talking, because you're going to be at our church tomorrow night and present your work and show us what you guys are going to be doing. And we've been talking for a little while through emails and phone calls. So you and I have something in common, and that is that neither of us were raised in a Christian home. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So tell me about how you grew up, when you got saved. That's always an interesting story for, the folks that didn't say, yeah, I just went to church my whole life. I was 8 years old and I heard the gospel and I got saved at Vacation Bible School, and here I am.
Yep.
So yours was a little bit different.
It was. Yeah. I mean, And I tell you what, I would have loved to have a story like that.
Sure.
But for me, it wasn't the case. We were raised Catholic my whole life, really into my early teen years. I went to a Catholic elementary school, altar boy, the whole 9 yards. I remember one time the priest gave me his white collar that they wear under their dress shirts there, and I thought, man, I've arrived. As an 8-year-old boy, I have arrived. I have the white collar, and so I was just embedded in that type of religion, if you want to call it that. And it wasn't until, like I said, my early teen years that my sister began dating a man, and he was a Christian and just had a heart for souls, and he wanted to move forward with dating my sister, but he knew that he couldn't unless she was saved, and so that was a fire under him, and so he found the church that we're now sent out of. I remember going on a Wednesday night, and I'm sure you can recall this, but I was so thankful because on a Wednesday night at the church, we didn't have to kneel.
Okay.
And I thought, man, I always hated kneeling. You pulling those little bars out, kneeling down, and we're taught you can't have your backside touch the pew and all this stuff. And so your back's just killing you. You're struggling. I thought, man, I don't have to kneel. This is great. I'm sold. Let's go here. The rest of my life,
That's all it took.
Yeah. And so I think we skipped the next week, and then we started going the following Sunday. And one by one, my family got saved. And here we are now. That boyfriend that my sister was dating is now my brother-in-law. And so the Lord just worked it out. And so really for his passion for souls is why I'm in front of you today.
No kidding.
So just it's exciting. I'm humbled by it. I'm thankful for it. But just I'll be forever indebted to his passion for souls and wanting our family to be saved.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Yeah.
And now you guys are you guys BIMI missionaries?
We are. Yes, sir. Yep,
okay. So anyone can find you on the BIMI website. That's bimi.org. Yep. And do you guys have a number or something that
we do? Yeah. Okay. We have there's a PayPal link there. You can just click on that PayPal link. Our number is 1614. And to give or just pray for us, really.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing as well.
So anyone, if you go to bimi.org, you can look up Greg and his wife, Bekah, and their kids. You can look at their prayer letters. You can get information about what they're doing and how they're doing. You can pray for them, and you can financially support them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So tell me about the church you guys are going to be going to in New Zealand.
Okay. It is just south of the city of Auckland, in a city called Manuriwa. And Auckland is actually the biggest city in the country. In fact, there's more people in that city than the entire South Island of the country. If you know about New Zealand, there's a North and a South Island, and they are completely different. They're not necessarily, one's better than the other. They'll argue which one's better than the other, but the South is a lot more agriculture, a lot more farming. The North is more, you get into bigger cities and things like that. But we'll be just south of Auckland and working with a pastor there.
What's the capital? I hate to tell you that's how much research I did on New Zealand coming into this thing.
Wellington.
Yep. And that's in the North Island as well.
It is the very bottom part of the North Island. Yep.
Okay.
So we'll work with a pastor there. He's been pastoring for 15 years total. I believe he started this work about 8 or 9 years ago. So he's been there for quite some time, and he is a Kiwi, that's a New Zealander, and he was reached by a missionary, and so that's really how he got introduced to the gospel, introduced to salvation, and just the Lord called him to preach, and now he's affecting even generations later. In fact, the missionary that led him to the Lord just died, I believe, about a month and a half ago, and so it's just amazing to see the torch carried on.
Oh, and,
that's what we hope to do someday as well.
Yeah.
So,
So now, what is your goal once you get over there? You're going to work with this church for a couple of years, and then what's the plan after that?
Yeah. So after that, we're praying about a region in the South Island, and it's called the West Coast, and it's on the west side of the Southern Alps, and that's the mountain range that runs up through New Zealand. And on the west side, it's a very isolated part of the country. There's no just direct route to the West Coast. And so as far as we know, there's never even been an attempted church plant in that region of the country. So the people are just different. I mean, even the other Kiwis know the West Coast is just a different breed. And so they just kind of, they're tougher. There's a lot of rain, so it's kind of like a Seattle type of feel, Seattle, Washington. It used to be a coal mining town, so just kind of a rougher, blue collar, let's just do this thing type of people.
What's the population?
Just over 5 million.
In the whole country?
In the whole country, yes, sir.
And the area that you guys are thinking about starting a church in the South Island?
Yes.
How big of a town or city are you guys going to be near or in?
Sure. So the West Coast, that little region, is about 30 to 40,000 people.
Oh.
Yeah. And so now that spans probably, over a couple hours drive.
Yeah.
But where we would go, there's 2 little towns that total probably, I'd say 20,000 of that 30 to 40,000 in those 2. They're about a half hour apart.
Okay. So using American terms, how far from the nearest Walmart would you be?
Boy.
Do they even have them on the South Island?
They do, but not in that city. In Christchurch, the big city, they would have them. And that's a 4-hour drive, to go from where we would like to be over to Christchurch. Yeah. So it'd be like there'd be some Dollar Generals if I'd put it in American terms. Maybe a McDonald's. Yeah. But it's like a one-stop light type of feel. You're in this little town. You're in this town. You hop on the motorway or the highway, and you head down, and there's nothing until you get to that next little town.
Now, so that's a little different than most missionaries. Most missionaries usually go for a populated area because that's going to give you a much easier time especially starting a church.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a church start or a church plant or helped out with one?
I not directly. My good friend was a part of a church plant, and so I kind of saw him from afar. But not directly. No, sir.
Okay.
So that'll be a challenge for sure, and especially a whole different part of the world. You add that on top of it, and just the people there in that region, they just, for whatever it is, they're broken people, and because of that, they just really don't want much to do with anyone. And so to break that wall down is going to take some time. It's a challenge, but obviously the Lord's in it. And so we're excited about that.
Wow. Okay. So are there any concerns about going to New Zealand? I mean, we just had missionaries here 2 months ago that were going to Ukraine.
Wow.
Literally the northeastern part. Yeah. Right before everything fell apart.
Yeah.
But I mean, New Zealand is not really a hotbed of war or terrorism or anything. As far as geopolitical areas, New Zealand is a first world country. They have first world medicine, so are there any concerns as far as going over there for anything other than how long of a flight is it? I mean, if you wanted to leave right now, how long until you're in New Zealand?
So if we flew from Denver, we'd go Denver to LAX probably. So whatever that, what that is, that flight, Denver LAX.
No, it's going to be a couple hours, but
okay.
Yeah.
And then add 13 onto that.
Oh, wow. And that'll bring you directly. So from LA, there's a direct flight.
There is. Yep.
Okay.
So that would, let's say if it's probably 15, 16 hours.
Wow.
Of air time.
Yeah.
And then there's usually a layover,
Sure.
Unless you go out of LAX.
Yeah.
But they just introduced a flight from JFK to New Zealand nonstop. And that's going to be 18 hours.
Wow.
On a plane. Yeah.
Now, you guys right now, where are you based out of?
Ohio, Northwest Ohio, kind of near the Michigan line. So we're Northwest Ohio. We'll probably end up flying out of Las Vegas. That's where my wife's father pastors out that way. So we'll probably get a cheap flight we fly out of Detroit most of the time. So Detroit to Vegas, you get them for a couple of days and then fly from Vegas to New Zealand. So.
Okay. So now tell everyone, you went to Bible college, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where'd you go to Bible college?
West Coast Baptist College in Lancaster, California.
Okay. And your wife went there as well?
Yes. Yep.
And that's where you guys met?
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. Yeah. So I was actually dating another girl all through Bible college. And right at my last semester, we broke up. And so those of you that are listening, if you know that, as a Bible college male graduating single,
you're basically a failure.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is the ultimate death sentence.
So all the girls just marked you off, put a line through your name and said, stay away from this guy.
Yeah. So I graduated single and thought, I'm a loser. I'm never going to ministry. I failed the Lord. I failed my family. It was just game over. And so my best friend is a year younger than me. So he was still at West Coast
for one more year.
year. And so I got home and it dawned on me that summer that, man, I'm single. And so I messaged him in the fall and I said, dude, just like send me a list of 5 single girls. And he did. And
did he do anything? Did he take that opportunity to be mischievous? Did he find you all the cross-eyed girls missing teeth?
No. Yeah, I'm thankful he didn't. He had me in the scope if he wanted to.
If he wanted to pull the trigger, he could have.
But man,
you say, look, I'm sorry, Greg. This is all you got. Okay, these are the only 3 that are left. Right. Good luck.
Yeah. So we fought through that, and to my shame, my now wife wasn't even my first choice. And so I talked to another girl for.
But on your side, you were going into the list cold.
That's right.
Your friend just said these are some girls that are single that you can approach and talk to. And,
yes.
Okay. So what? You throw a dart at the the list. Yeah.
So I figured, hey, if he sent me a list, top to bottom, in his eyes, number 1 is number 1. So I'm just gonna trust him. And so I messaged her for a few months. She ended up lying to me, so that was over. And then Bekah, my now wife, was choice number 2, and the rest is history.
Okay,
so, praise the Lord for that.
And how long you guys have been married now?
A little over 7 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you got out of Bible college, and how long have you been on deputation?
Full-time deputation. We've been on just under 19 months.
Okay.
So my wife had a child, so we took a month off for that. Then usually
only a month.
Yeah.
Wow, what a trooper.
Yeah, she's my hero. I took a month off, and then right at that month's end, I was back on the road by myself. She was at home. And then we took off like last December for the holidays. Well, both Decembers, I should say. So that kind of is how we did. It just worked out to be with family for that. And then, so about 19 months. Yep.
Okay. And then before that, you've been working, or were you on staff up in your church in Ohio, or were you just working a job and helping out there?
No. So I was on staff for my wife and I both. I was the assistant pastor there. And then we also taught at the Christian school at our home church. We did that for 2 school years. And that took us into deputation.
So you were a teacher as well as your wife?
Correct. Yeah.
What did you teach?
I was high school. So I did physics, math, phys ed, Bible, a bunch of different things. So.
How did you like being a high school teacher?
I learned this. It's a calling. It's a calling. It was a challenge for sure. Now that I've been a teacher, I feel terrible how I was as a student when I was in high school. So
okay.
Yeah, but no, I'm thankful for teachers. That's for sure. If you can listen and understand this today, thank a teacher, because
it's hard work.
It is.
Obviously, because your audience doesn't necessarily want to be there.
That's right.
And you need to get them to learn this stuff. Okay. Who were the worst kids?
I had a kid who just loved video games.
Okay.
Which not saying bad, but he would come home from school and just video games till like 3 a.m.
Oh.
So then it got to the point where he came to school
and he was like practically sleeping.
Yeah. And so I'll never forget, I gave him a demerit, which is like a bad thing.
Sure.
On his birthday. And I was a first-year teacher, so I didn't know it was his birthday. And this kid had gone like 5 years straight with no demerits.
Oh.
And so new teacher in town on his birthday hands him his first one.
Yeah.
Oh man, the parents wrote me a letter. How could you do this? I can't believe this. My son, his birthday. But then oddly enough, at the end of that school year, I got a Christmas card from him with a gift card in it for $50.
From the parents?
From the parents.
Maybe it was shock and awe. They were upset initially.
Yeah. Just got to work through some things.
And then they grew up and realized, well, he's the teacher, maybe we should take his side instead of our teenage son.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that. Right.
Okay. So, how did your wife like teaching?
She enjoyed it. She was kindergarten, so it was a little bit different for her. It was more like babysitting, you know, for a few hours a day. No, just kidding. So no, she I think she enjoyed it. It's a fun age. You hear funny things they say.
Yeah.
So she enjoyed that aspect. And for her, it was more, just get them through the day, teach them some things. And then, when she got home, she could kind of shut it off. Whereas for me, I was teaching like, physics, right? I have no training in physics.
Oh, good.
I didn't even get that far in my own high school years. So I would go home and I would study the next lesson.
Sure.
You know,
so that you sounded like you knew what day of the week it was.
Right. So I would just pray.
Yeah.
And pray the next day in class, no student would ask me a question because I didn't know the answer. I knew what I was supposed to teach, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, that took, I would study I would take an hour off before I got home just to kind of decompress. And then we would eat supper, and I would go from usually 5:30, 6 o'clock to 11 at night prepping for the next day.
Yeah.
And so I was just exhausted.
So you didn't study education at all in college, or
No.
that was just when you got to the church, that was a need that had to be filled, and you were a warm body. And it's like, well, the guy graduated college, he's got to be smart enough to teach some high school kids.
Right. That's exactly it. And so legally, I had to have some sort of an education portion of my degree. And so since my diploma said a bachelor's in biblical education, there's the green light. The word education's in it. And so I could do it.
And was that a state to state law?
I believe so.
In
yes.
Ohio,
Yep,
that was...
I believe. Yep.
Okay. And you said you taught Bible as well. How'd you enjoy that?
I love that part. It was usually about a half hour. It was a half hour a day, right in the morning. So the kids got there was assembly, say our Pledge of Allegiance and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we go right into Bible. And I loved it because most of the time their minds were the sharpest because they, they just got to school, they hadn't been through class after class after class.
And fallen asleep.
Yeah. Right. And so being able to teach them that and just kind of see them kind of grow as well was really cool, really rewarding. So I really enjoyed that.
Now, over in New Zealand, is there a Christian school there? Are you guys planning on homeschooling? What's the public school system like? Because obviously my audience knows that we homeschool, but it just hit me like you're going to another country, and some countries it's illegal to not have your kids in the government school. I know over in Switzerland, you have to.
Wow.
Homeschooling is not allowed, so what's it like over in New Zealand?
Yeah. So you actually right now, they're kind of in a battle right now. So last school year, a good friend of mine who's a missionary there reached out and said, "Hey, what are your plans for homeschooling or teaching?" And I said, "Well, I haven't really thought about it a whole lot." He said, "Well, I'm going to start thinking about it because right now we just got a warning, an email from a government official saying that we either have to start teaching New Zealand history or change curriculums or send your kid off to school." And that was a shock to him. He'd been teaching his kids for the better part of 4 years at home.
Yeah.
Under this American-based curriculum. And so I think he's hired a lawyer and they're kind of working through it right now. So that's kind of up in the air. I'm not too sure. There are Christian schools there. We would be able to send our child to school for free because we're on a work visa. So that's an option if that's the case. We would prefer probably homeschooling, but it's kind of up in the air right now. So it's not really a definite answer on that. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But I think once they kind of work through this thing, we'll have a better idea of what we'll be able to do.
Okay.
So we have a few years anyways. Nola's 2, so we'll have a few years.
Before you got to pull the trigger in one direction.
Right.
Are there any laws prohibiting the instruction of the Bible, giving the gospel, preaching on any subjects? I know we just recently have been watching some laws being passed in Canada where all of a sudden pastors are not allowed to preach against homosexuality. Are there any things like that in New Zealand as far as things that are prohibited that are going to...
No, not currently. There are some things with like outside counsel. So if someone came to me, and this is, obviously it's a hot topic right now, identity, right? Who are you? Am I a male or female? Do I want to change? And so if they came to me and I gave them any biblical advice and that counseling session got back to a government official that I gave them biblical advice, I could be fined, or if they deem it detrimental enough, I could actually be imprisoned. So there's things there's steps being taken to where that goes into law, but it's not quite there yet.
And that just has to do with identity politics right now.
Correct.
That's the one hot button topic where they want you to what? Just avoid talking to them altogether?
Yeah, or just kind of, I guess, feed their ego to do whatever they want to do, which doesn't really make sense if they're coming to you for counsel.
Sure.
You don't just want to give them what they want to hear. You should give them good advice.
Sound advice.
Yeah. But it's very much this idea of, hey, whatever feels best for you. Hey, truth is your truth. You do your truth.
Yeah, and that goes great with the Bible.
Oh,
I mean, that fits right in with everything Jesus said.
Absolutely.
Just like Burger King Christianity. Have it your way.
Yeah, do you. Yeah.
Oh, boy. That could be a mess.
Yeah. So, and there are some things kind of, so in March of 2019, there was a shooting in New Zealand. A man came in, he had it filmed on Facebook Live. He walked into a mosque.
Okay.
And there were people worshiping in there. He killed 51 people in a matter of minutes. When did
this happen?
March of 2019.
Man, I don't even remember hearing about that.
No, it was really a shocker for the country of New Zealand. You haven't
had those.
No.
Okay.
There's no, I mean, in fact, this year it was ranked the second safest country in the world.
Wow.
Outside of Iceland. So it's a very, there's some heavy gun laws there. So it was shocking. Well, when that happened, the prime minister felt so terrible that it happened in her country. She just opened up her arms towards Islam, and she had a big memorial for the shooting in this massive cricket stadium. She dressed up, in the head garb. They actually put her face, a digital rendition of her face, on the tallest building in the world, in the country of Dubai, as like a symbol of honor for welcoming the Islamic faith. And so when that happened, she really tried to just kind of push things through Islam. I don't know if it's gone into law yet. I don't even know if it's still on the table. But she tried to get where once a week in the public school system, the children stopped and prayed to Allah.
Wow.
She was trying to get that through. And I don't believe it's gone through yet, if she's even still trying to do that. But when that happened, there was kind of a shift in the country with like just this idea of let's just open up to everyone and everything, and where that's, I think, where you get that truth is your truth type of thing. We don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah.
We want to stay peaceful. We want to stay, everyone's good side. So.
Yeah. Now, if that happened in America, I mean, people would be having a heart attack. They'd be lighting their hair on fire, and they'd be fighting it out.
Yes.
And whether that was Islam or Christianity,
right.
People wouldn't put up with that.
For sure.
Wow. Okay. Okay. What is what's the funniest story you've got for us while being on deputation? You've been literally living out of a vehicle with 2 babies for 10 weeks. And prior to that, you're one little girl. So you got to have some, funny stories. Trying to drive around the country. And
yeah. So there was one, we were in Wyoming, and we're driving down the road, and we're just going to stop and get lunch, I think. And as we're pulling off the highway, I just smelled something terrible. Oh, man, what is that smell? Bekah was sleeping. And so I thought, man, what is going on? And I turn around, and Nola at this point is she's maybe 10 months, maybe. And she's just kind of sleeping, and I'm thinking, well, certainly it's not her. So we stop and get out, and Bekah goes, hey, can you get Nola? I said, sure. So she goes, I go around the van, I open the van. And as I'm getting out of her car seat, she is just covered from like rear end to neck in feces.
Diaper blowout.
Yeah.
Oh, my
and
soul.
so I grab her, and I look down, and I'm just
like, oh boy,
covered.
Yeah. Needed a hazmat suit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Bekah starts getting things ready, and she took this photo. Maybe you can post it. I'll send it to you. And I'm holding Nola, and my face is just up like this.
Oh yeah.
And
you're turning green.
Oh man. So that for that portion of driving, that's probably the funniest story. The funniest story now, it wasn't funny in the moment, was we were staying in a home. We were at a church, and the pastor was like, hey, we're going to take you out into the country afterwards. Stay with us. It'd be great. So we go out there, the service ends, and we get to the house. It's probably a half hour from church. We're way out there. And he goes, oh, well, why don't you go ahead and step outside? I'll get everything ready inside. So we go outside, and he's showing us the horses and stuff they have. And so it's like, all right. I think my wife said you're good. So we walk upstairs and walk into our bedroom we're going to sleep in. And as soon as we walk in this bedroom, I knew this is going to be an awful night.
Oh no.
And there's just
20 cats.
Oh, there's just hair everywhere. She takes us into the bathroom, and there's like used soap. It looked like no one had been in this bathroom for literally 10 years. There was a ring around the toilet.
Sure.
And so we have to stay here for a whole night.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking we're not gonna be able to do this. So I thought, let's just stay outside as long as we can. So we go downstairs, and the wife is now showing me and Nola the horses. Well, as this is happening, this cat comes up, and Nola's petting this cat and just loving up on it. And she goes, oh, I probably should have told you. We think something's wrong with the cat. I'm like, excuse me? And I look down, and this
your
cat,
daughter's like on the cat.
Yeah, and this cat looks up and meows at me. It's missing teeth. There's chunks of fur coming off of it. I'm like,
does it have the plague?
Right. Put this thing down. And so I pick up Nola. Now I'm frustrated. So we go back inside, and he insists that we stayed until the next night and had breakfast with him. And we're just trying to get out of breakfast as long as we can.
Yeah.
And he finally says, no, please stay. So we stay, and we go to pray before breakfast. And he's like, we usually hold hands. Would you mind holding hands? Sure. At this point, whatever.
Yeah.
So we all hold hands, and about halfway through, I start feeling this tickle on my thumb, and the pastor is rubbing the inside of my thumb, like that little crevice,
while holding your hand,
while holding my hand and praying. So I instantly go into a sweat. I'm thinking,
how old was this guy? Could he have just mistakenly, he's so used to holding his wife's hand that he forgot?
Well,
I mean, what do you think at that point?
Oh, man, what do I think? I don't know that'd be good for the airways. I just thought to myself, I want to be in the van. And so we finished praying. We ate as quick as we could, got on the road. We get down about a mile down the road, and Becca goes, I think I forgot my phone.
Yeah.
So we'll
buy you a new one.
Yeah. So we ended up turning back around, and that was probably, it's the funniest thing now.
Sure.
But it was just so awful in the moment.
So uncomfortable.
Yeah. So that was.
Have you ever been to a church where you just up and left? Like, to give you an example, I'm self-employed, and I go and give guys bids at, to go do this or that in construction. And I've had a few times where I'm at a customer's house for 15 minutes walking around talking to them about what they want done. And I'm like, you know what? Good luck. And I pat them on the back and I just walk away, because it is so ridiculous what they're asking for. And they've clearly only hired the cheapest guys ever. And I don't want to work for this guy. And I got a bad feeling, and just everything's lining up where I'm like, man, I just don't want anything to do with this. Have you ever had that in a church where you're just like, you know what, sweetie, go ahead, get in the car, we're out of here, and you just screech the tires on the way out of the parking lot?
No, the answer is no, but I was seconds away from one.
Okay. And that wasn't the one where the pastor was.
That was not that one. Yeah,
it was a different one. Okay.
Yeah, that was in our home state of Ohio, and we had a guy, and he literally he said that his people he wanted to reach was people who were previously incarcerated. That was his heart.
Got it. Prison ministry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he just started this church, and everything was going good, and Becca had just had Nola. This was really early on, probably our 10th church.
Okay.
And man, she was downstairs in this unfinished basement. That was the nursery. So, drywall dust everywhere. She's nursing Nola down there, and she came back up late into the service, and from the pulpit, she sat about midway. I was up in the front row, and from the pulpit, he called her out and goes, "Woman, what are you doing? Why are you sitting back there?" And she's carrying a car seat
and a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she's what?
Yeah. How do you answer that?
Yeah. He goes, "You get up here. You sit with him."
Oh my
get up here.
soul.
And he just braves her in front, stops his preaching.
Oh my soul.
Then continues to preach for an hour and a half on, I can't remember.
Oh, of course not. Yeah. You're not thinking. Yeah.
Right. And then afterwards, we waited for the people to walk out, and he was going to take us to lunch. And I said, no, I think we're okay. We'll be all right.
Yeah.
And so he gave us a love offering, and we went on our way. I mean, it was
awkward.
It was, I was so mad.
Wow.
Like, you don't come after my wife like that. Yeah. I mean, if you want to do it to me, that's fine. I'll handle it. But
oh my soul.
Not my wife, who's literally weeks postpartum.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Brother.
So
that was the most awkward.
That was the most awkward in church moment of my life, period. Like, not even deputation. That goes to life. So yeah, that was terrible.
Well, you know what? That's when you pray and you thank God that you're not a member of that church.
That's right.
And you pray for the poor people that's got to put up with a guy like that.
In that same sermon, he called someone an idiot, and he said to another person, "I don't even want to be your friend." And they're members of his church. He said that from the pulpit
To people that were there.
Yep.
Wow.
To people that were there.
Love of Jesus.
Love of Jesus. Yeah. That's the spirit.
Okay. So you were in Ohio serving there for how long before you went on deputation?
2 school years.
Okay.
Yep. So not 2 calendar years, just 2 years of school.
Tell me some lessons you learned about working in a church in those 2 years. Because there's a big difference between going to Bible college and being in a church and working with people,
Sure.
And being in the trenches.
Yeah.
How about this? What was a shock to you from what you expected in Bible college to the reality when you got to churches?
Churches in the ministries I've worked in, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you worked in one in New Jersey.
Yep.
You worked in one in Ohio.
Yep.
And did you do any work in Las Vegas? Were you there for any period of time?
I did. Yep. So I was an intern there, basically an assistant to my father-in-law for just under a year.
Okay. So you have experience all over the country in 3 different churches working there.
Right.
Okay.
I would say this.
And think of this. You're talking to Bible college students right now. You're talking to young guys that are in Bible college that want to get out and serve the Lord. They want to get into a church. What do they need to know?
Number one, not every pastor is your envisionment of a pastor.
Yeah.
Every pastor is different. And you need to, I'm just talking about college students, you need to be able to an extent, adapt to that pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying become that pastor. I'm not saying just be his yes man,
mm-hmm.
but understand that you need to make sure that you can handle that pastor's mentality.
Yeah.
His
personality.
Yeah. His attitude towards ministry.
Because a lot of these kids that are going to end up in Bible college, they've really had 2 pastors their whole life.
That's
they
right.
came from a church, and then the pastor that runs the church that, the Bible college is out of.
Yep.
So those are their only 2 experiences.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the Bible college they go to, obviously that pastor has some success because,
That's right.
churches my size don't start a Bible college, so you had to have grown a church to a substantial size to be able to support that. So that guy's got something figured out. And then you got the church that you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're going to be going somewhere else. And the guy that you're going to be working for,
that's right,
could be very, very different.
Right. In your idea of this beautiful schedule of ministry, I'm going to get up and I'll have coffee with my wife and we'll go 8 to 5 in the office, come home, have evenings together.
Yeah.
Like keep dreaming.
Yeah.
Because number one, that big church where your Bible college is at, there's 75 to 100 staff members.
Sure.
That are doing those things.
All the different things, including mowing the lawn,
Yep.
including painting what needs painted. And guess what? The church you're starting at.
Congratulations. That's you. That's you. Yep. And so that's number one. And then number 2, just learn to be content where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
I had some different situations in my ministry experiences growing or before deputation, and just my advice is don't be looking for the next thing down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Just if God has you there, you need to be content in that, and then just do your best and work your hardest. And if one day you want to kind of use that first ministry as a platform, well, then that's great. But do your best where you're at. And then I would say, thirdly, have patience.
Mm-hmm.
Have patience and never quit. Never give up. If you know that God has called you to something, then by His grace, He'll fulfill that through you. And just don't give up. Don't quit. Don't. When things get tough, don't throw in the towel. When circumstances don't plan out the way you thought they would, welcome to life. So.
Yeah, ministry in a lot of ways is like getting married. It's going to be hard. There are going to be some really hard times. There's going to be a lot of hard work. There are going to be a lot of things you didn't expect, So one of the running jokes that one of my best friends, this guy Scott, he went to North Valley Baptist Church, Jack Trieber, and what's the Bible college
Golden
there?
State.
Golden State Baptist College. And for him and a bunch of his friends that, graduated and went off and started churches around the country, their running joke was, well, they didn't teach me that in Bible college.
Yes.
They would say that
so true.
Once every week, where you run into something and you're like, man, I never thought I was going to be dealing with this.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And even things like I was telling you earlier, this thing's what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so many things, what not to do that we never learned in Bible college.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I learned them. They were sometimes hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But so thankful, because then that helps me to avoid that mistake later on down the road.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think ministry is one of the best teachers. You can have all the book smarts in the world, but when you got someone who comes to you and their marriage is a wreck,
yeah,
go to the Bible, go to God's word, ask for grace, and man, let him use you, because you're probably not going to find a Bible college notepad
sure that has the answer, or the textbook that,
right.
Yeah. Well, and something, I'll tell you what, I have a couple of guys around the country that I really love and respect, and I still bring them things where I'm like, hey, this is a new one for me. I don't know what to do here. And this is what I'm thinking, but I'd like you to weigh in on this.
Yeah.
And I've never been the guy to think that I have all the answers. I don't think that's going to be good for me or anybody else. So I always like to go to someone with a little bit more wisdom and experience than me and get a second set of eyes on it to try to figure out what to do.
And I think that's smart. And even for young people in ministry, don't go into your first ministry thinking that, here I am. I'm this pastor's this pastor's thankful to. You better be thankful to have me.
Yeah, I've arrived. Yeah, here we go.
Because you'll find out real quick that you don't know much.
You and I, when we were at lunch, we were talking about leadership, and I brought up in the Gospels how Jesus paints a picture of what leadership in a church is supposed to be. And what Jesus did was he got down on his hands and knees and he washed the feet of those that were in his church. And I think whenever we go into ministry with that type of mindset, that I'm there to serve, and the Bible says, he who is first will be last. That's the goal. So top-down leadership means I'm supposed to be last. I'm supposed to be the servant of all. And when I go into it with that mindset, it's a lot harder for me to be disappointed. It's a lot harder for me to have my feelings hurt. It's a lot harder for me to feel defeated and want to give up, because my job is to serve all of these people.
That's right. I mean, it's so true. And it's just, and having that mentality, it helps you so much. You don't have to worry about what this person thinks of me. Hey, I know God's called me here, and I'm just going to serve and let him do the rest. There's so much liberty in that. You don't have to live up to something or live up to this name and just try to be someone. Just serve. Yeah. And let God take care of the rest. And man, I tell you what, that's a freeing place to be mentally, for sure. So.
Okay, so you guys are going to be getting ready to go apply and leave for New Zealand in just a couple of months. That's the goal. How many more churches are you going to be going to visit?
We have, after you, we have, 2, 3, 4, I'd say 5 to 7. I have to check my calendar, but not too many. I mean, just ones that we had on the calendar before. We honestly we were not expecting to be here this time last year. We thought for sure we'd be in New Zealand already. But
was it a COVID thing that slowed everything down?
It was, yeah. So the new variant is what kind of changed everything. There was talk that first of the year we'd be able to apply.
So it was on New Zealand's end. It wasn't like you weren't able to get meetings here and that slowed you down. It was New Zealand that changed things.
Correct. Yeah. So when New Zealand at the first year, they went to a what they call a traffic light system, red light, green light.
Sure.
And so
we all have those cute levels.
Yeah.
Oh, it's plaid today.
Yeah,
that's we're at plaid. Check the chart, sweetie.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Yeah. So when that happened, they kept the borders closed. And then just really, I think around beginning of March, they implemented this 5-phase reopening system. And that's when we found out okay, our phase is going to be October 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, we'll just keep the meetings that we had, then we're going to be here. Well, then they pushed everything up now to August 1st. So that's a blessing to us. But
Sure.
yeah, just because, and I just think to myself, I've done the work to call and kind of make these connections.
Yeah.
Obviously the Lord has allowed it. So
Yeah.
let's just push through.
Is there any requirements over in New Zealand as far as getting the shot?
There is. Yep. So if you're a New Zealand citizen, you do not have to be vaccinated to re-enter the country.
But if you're not,
you have to get vaccinated. Yep.
To what age?
Right now it is 12.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, because we had a couple of guys that were talking about that as far as they didn't know how it was going to work, with getting the shot. And obviously people have different views on that. Was New Zealand a pretty serious lockdown country? I mean, I wasn't checking on New Zealand or listening very much. I sure was listening about Australia.
Yeah.
And that was the most crazy thing I've heard in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Was New Zealand really?
Oh yeah. They
bad?
In fact, the prime minister has been praised worldwide for how she's handled it.
Oh, that means it's a train wreck.
Oh yeah. It was crazy. So for the first 6 weeks, it was complete isolation. You couldn't leave your home. You basically go to the grocery store when your number was called and the hospital. And that was it. And
Wow.
So it was after that, they went 102 days with 0 cases of COVID. And they opened everything up within the country. I mean, they didn't even have masks.
Yeah.
I mean, they were fine. Well, then a family of 4 in Auckland got the virus. And when that happened, everything locked down again. And so I know pastors
because one family got it, the whole country locked down.
Yep, there was a man who got it from his vaccinated wife, and they thought, "How could this be? Like, we have records she was vaccinated," and it shocked them. And so they just thought, let's lock this place down. So did it again. And it was during that time in Auckland, our pastor that we're going to work with, he didn't see his congregation for like over 100 days.
Wow.
It was really tough on them. And so they were very, very tight, very, very restricted. But by God's grace, they're coming out of it.
Wow.
So, praise the Lord. The prime minister's approval rate has now plummeted, because the New Zealand citizens are just tired of it. And
and that was kind of one of the things I was wondering is, where are they now? Because I don't know if you heard about, and this has been a little while, it might have been a couple of months now, but England, Ireland, Scotland, they all came out and they're like, hey, guess what? We're done. They're like, we've reached herd immunity. It's over.
Yeah.
No more masks, no more shots, no more lockdowns. We're not even going to allow you to talk about COVID.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
And they were just like, everything's opened up. See you next year.
Yep.
And so is New Zealand there?
They're not there yet. No, like I said, they still require the vaccine. Their national airline, Air New Zealand, you have to be vaccinated to fly with them. They make it really difficult right now to get certain jobs without the vaccine. So they don't technically come out and say you have to have it, but they make it pretty difficult to get it.
Yeah.
So they want you to get it. There's some guys I've talked to who think that our summertime, which is their winter, they might change it kind of to what England did, where you just open everything up again. But I'm not holding my breath, that's for sure. So yeah, they're pretty tight.
Wow. Okay. So let's see. Other than that, are you guys fully funded and ready to go?
We are. Yep.
How long do you stay on the mission field once you get there? And you're with BIMI, so you have gone through additional training for being a missionary with that missions agency. And I'm guessing you've taken classes in Bible college.
That's correct. Yep.
Having to do with missions.
Yes.
What do you expect as far as you get to the field? When do churches start to dip off in supporting you? When do you have to come back to America and make the rounds again? Do they have numbers for that and what you expect? Is that something that...
So for us personally, we will be in New Zealand for that whole first visa.
You have to be there for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I don't, because I believe, I have to double check on this, but I believe there's some restrictions that could, if we leave the country for a certain amount of days, it could hurt us when you apply
for citizenship or
exactly.
whatever. Okay.
So we want to be there at least until we get residency. my goal is hopefully that when we get that residency, fly back to the States, report to some churches.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we go back, be there as we start the new work.
You really want to be there as long as you can.
Exactly.
You can't leave a brand new work.
No.
So what are the numbers as far as churches that take you on and just support you until you die versus, churches that are going to peter out?
Sure.
Because some churches, they close, a pastor dies, the church wasn't that big or financially strong or whatever. I mean, obviously things happen.
Yeah. As far as what people have told me, most of them will say the duration that you're there.
Okay.
Which is a blessing. Others, I have a few that say you have to come back every 3 to 4 years and report to that church.
They want you physically coming back.
Right. Okay. Which just for us, that's just not feasible. There's just no way to be able to do that. So we won't have them for too long. I have a church that basically at a certain time period, they check up on us, see what we're doing, how it's going.
Yeah.
And then they either extend or stop their support. So there's kind of a variation of how it works, but most of the time, at least in our case, we've had people who will say we'll do it as long as you're alive, essentially.
Sure.
So
now, I don't know if churches are going to get on board with this, but I mean, nowadays with technology, you would be able to visit their church remotely from New Zealand. I mean, you guys have Wi-Fi down there,
right.
So you really could check in that way. I don't know what the benefit would be of you physically being there.
Yeah. I would be okay with that. Absolutely. It's just kind of the pastor's flavor. I think a lot of it is, some of these churches, a new pastor comes
and he wants to check up on all the missionaries.
Exactly. Or you get, over the years, by God's grace, new people come in and, they want these new people to see, I was just at a church just yesterday.
Yeah.
And, they've been supporting us since, January of last year. So it's over a year. And I saw new faces just within a year.
Sure.
So to see them, that's good for me to meet them and for them to see us. It helps with prayer. It helps with just having a burden for the country. And there's nothing like seeing someone in person who's actively doing the work. So I think that's probably part of it. Again, with COVID, it really changed a lot. I mean, I went to 3 churches through FaceTime.
Really?
Yeah, on deputation. Never visited, and some of them took us on. So
okay.
Yeah, it's just based on the pastor, really.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to answer this question. What is getting in the way of missions being successful and missionaries getting the support they need and, Christianity thriving through missions? What do you think? This is a brainstorming session. There's no wrong answers. Okay. You've been on deputation. You're done. You're ready to go to the country. You're already doing the paperwork. So you've been through this side. Now comes the tough part, which is going over there and working for this church. And then 2-3 years later is going to come another tough step when you're going to get out on your own and start a church in the place that you're planning on it. What are we failing at as pastors of churches? What is Christianity failing at, that keeps missions from being successful?
I think in my case, I just saw a lot of this mold that we had to fit into for so many churches.
In fundamentalism?
Right. Never. No. I just think that sometimes these missionaries who are trying to get to the field are calling or emailing these pastors trying to get a visit. And the pastor has this preconceived idea in his head that this is how I've done ministry here.
Sure.
I enjoy how it's gone. I see success in it. So they better be like this.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, well, then that's probably not going to be successful. So I'm going to not have them in.
Yeah.
Well, that's great that it worked in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
But that might not be the same as Daytona, Florida.
Right.
Or
even
else.
New Zealand or Africa.
Sure.
I mean,
we're not saying to not use the Bible in this place or that. I mean, we're still using the same book. We're still preaching the same message.
Right.
But the fact is, people are different. Culture's a little different. And in missions, obviously, we're even dealing with greater cultural and language differences. And
sure. And just, I think of, just certain comments I've heard from pastors, and just their mentality is, well, let's got to figure it out. And yeah, we're gonna have to think outside the box. And New Zealand is the official religion of New Zealand is no religion.
Really?
That's as of 2019. That is there's more people that claim no religion than anything else.
Wow.
Now, atheism isn't even included in that.
Yeah.
That's its own religion. So, good luck knocking on a door.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that you don't do that.
Yeah.
But that mentality that works in the South
mm-hmm.
probably doesn't work here in Grand Junction.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just, I think it's just this preconceived idea that we make so many restrictions on all these missionaries that have to be just like us in every aspect, or they're out.
My wife and I were talking about that on the drive home from lunch. And we were saying that if pastors that support a missionary require the missionary to be exactly like they are, well, that means that only 1 out of 10 churches is going to support that guy, because all of these churches are a little different.
That's right.
But they're not okay with any variance whatsoever, to a point where we're stopping the gospel from getting out there. And one thing that I've always felt comfortable with as a Christian is when I pay my tithe, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It will be spent wisely or it will be spent foolishly, but it has nothing to do with me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to make sure that I'm obedient on my end, and that's it. And I do hope and pray that, the church that I'm a member of is doing a good job with the money. But as a Christian, I know I've done my part. And as a pastor, I can think the same thing. I try to find missionaries that I feel comfortable with. They're hard workers, they're go-getters, they're people, they are a people person. They're going to get along with people. And I think they have the best chance of success, because I do want our dollars to be invested wisely. But beyond that, it's like, look, we took you on, it's between you and God. You're the one that's going to have to stand before him and answer him. We were faithful on our part. We're giving the money out.
That's right.
And it's that easy. And unfortunately, I think a lot of pastors really want, like you said, their exact identical work replicated somewhere. And if it is, more than a 2% variance outside of what they're okay with, then it's no good. And we were, kind of laughing and joking about this earlier, but we claim to be independent Baptist. We seem to have forgotten what independent means.
Right.
Okay. You run your church. Mm-hmm. I don't. When you go off and start your church in the South Island, that's your church. It's not mine. I have no say in any of it. You and your members are going to figure it out and vote on everything, and you're going to do it, and you're going to go to God for answers, and that's it.
Yeah.
I don't have to be a part of it, and then our church is going to be run the way our people do it, and it's okay that it's different. And it's a shame, when I hear that, because I've talked to missionaries and they can't get their foot in the door at a church because they went to a different Bible college than the pastor of that church. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's that quick and it's over. And it's always a shame to hear that.
And I think also too, unfortunately, it affects the missionaries' genuineness.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget early on when I was calling and trying to book schedules, I called this pastor, and he'd say he's more conservative, and which is fine.
Yeah.
And I found myself, as he's we're just talking, and I'm going, yeah, amen, amen. So then we hang up the phone. I got the meeting, and then I called this other church literally 5 minutes later, and I would say he was a little more non-conservative.
Yeah.
But I found myself saying, yeah, amen, just trying to get a meeting, and I hung up the phone,
and you're thinking
to yourself, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, if I try to become this chameleon everywhere I go, someone's going to get offended.
Sure.
And so I just need to be me.
Yep.
If they want to have me in, they'll have me in. If not, well, then that's okay too. I'll trust the Lord to give me the meetings.
Yep.
I'll trust the Lord to raise the support. And from that point forward, I just kind of, this might sound bad, but I just got over it. Like, who cares? I ultimately answer to the Lord.
Yeah.
And I can't just send these emails, make these phone calls one way,
Yep.
And then knowing full well I'm not that way.
Because that's a politician.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what a politician does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. And that really helped me just to kind of be content in the timing of everything, in the traveling, in the churches we went to. I mean, yeah, it really is something you just have to get real with yourself and say, listen, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Be that person. Don't try to manipulate. Don't try to fake it till you make it. Just be you.
You know, I've been in fundamentalism for 20 years now, and I've been in a lot of churches all around the country. And it wasn't until I learned that lesson and I was okay with who I am and I could be comfortable with myself, even though it was a little different from some of these other guys. That's where I found peace. And that's where I found that I can just go to God. And so long as I'm trying to please him, it doesn't matter if everyone else is pleased. And it was the best place to be. And when you go off and you start your own church, that is going to be attractive to people because they're going to say, I believe him, and they can trust you. Because you've been around phonies. How many independent Baptist churches have you been in America?
Yeah.
You can smell a phony when you pull in the parking lot. Okay, we've all been around them, and it's not genuine. It's not attractive. So when you are yourself, I think they'll let their guard down. They'll be comfortable, and you really have a chance to then get to know them and love them and change their life and help them to, be a lot more like the Lord. So it's encouraging to hear that, you learned that lesson on deputation rather than when you're 60 years old and
Amen.
at the end of your ministry.
Amen.
So we have reached the end of the hour. Greg, what's been your favorite part of this episode?
Oh man, I would say just being able to share, about New Zealand, share the burden. And just, I don't know, I guess just try to help people to understand that there's trials and missions, and there's some things that need to be fixed. But one thing I've learned over the last however many months it's been, missions is moving forward. And we can be thankful in that. If you turn on the news and you think, even after 30 minutes of watching the news, man, we are hopeless.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. It's not. There are churches just like this one here, all over the country, that want to reach people with the salvation of Jesus Christ, and they want to see people saved. You want people to grow in the Lord, and I don't think God's done yet, and that's I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, Greg, I'm just going to go ahead and say, because everyone's thinking it, you have a voice for radio. You need to start a podcast when you get to New Zealand. Okay. I'm telling you, you have a voice for it. Wow. Whether the content's there, we'll see. I haven't heard you preach yet. So I don't know if you can preach your way out of a paper bag, but you definitely have the voice for it. So
awesome. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please be sure to check us out on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. That's every Sunday night at 7 p.m. And then if you are watching us on if you're watching the video, please be sure to get on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Audible, TuneIn Radio, basically anywhere you can find a podcast, and follow us on Bible Thumper. And we will appreciate that. And we'll see you next week. Thank you, Greg, for coming, and everybody have a good night.